Alright guys, so this video has been a long time coming for me, and it will basically take the form of a major critique of this particular law school, that being Campbell University, now located in Raleigh. The first thing I'd like to do is point out a couple of the positives, and there really are only a couple positive, at least empirical slash somewhat subjective elements to this law school. The first being its location. It's now located in Raleigh. It's been in Raleigh since 2009, so that's one big benefit. It was located in Bowie's Creek in Harnett County, North Carolina prior. So now it's in Wake County. It's in the heart of the capital. You have easy access to a great deal of government functions, as well as a much larger job market. So that is one of the big benefits. The other benefit you have at Campbell is their curriculum is very focused on bar preparation. So you have a whole lot of classes that are required at Campbell that do help out with bar preparation, and they do have a typically larger than average pass rate. Although since 2019, that bar passes rate, we can't really do much with the data because North Carolina switched to the multi-state bar exam. But I will point out that their bar passage rate has kind of been ebbing and flowing since about 2012. It's been going up and down. It hasn't been very consistent. So that's about the only real positives we have about Campbell that will be discussed in this video. Alright, so this is the next little element that should basically inform your decision not to attend Campbell, as it makes absolutely no sense what they charge for their tuition. So you notice here we start out with, in 2011, a tuition for full-time of $33,910 per year with a $26,700 off-campus living expense. And the assumption is you'll live off campus unless you happen to live very close to the law school. And most of the time they recommend that if you attend law school, you live near the law school to make study a little bit easier. So that's what we're dealing with starting in 2011. Now, the tuition prior to that was lower, and the data is available if you want to go searching for it, but I didn't want to pull anything that wasn't directly from the ABA Requires Disclosures webpage, where I got all this data from and directly pulled these actual shots from it. Then you'll look over to the 1L tuition for 2019 and 2020. You'll see it's gone up to $42,600, so roughly an increase overall of about 25%, a little more than 25%. What I find particularly telling about this is the fact that the living off campus from 2011 is pegged at $26,700, and the live off campus for 19 and 2020 has actually gone down about $80. So the increase in tuition has no tie to any inflation rate, consumer price index, cost of living in the area. In theory, if they wanted to justify their increased tuition, maybe they would have raised that estimation for the cost of living, but I think that would be an untenable price increase. Overall, the full sticker price, if you take out loans to cover your living expenses, excuse me, losing my voice, to cover your living expenses, you're looking at a price tag of around the $170 mark. And excuse me, that number was incorrect. It was actually the $207 mark. So you're looking at $207,000 without any grants, scholarships, which Campbell does give out, but most are for well less than half tuition. So we're talking about a minimum six figures probably, plus dealing with everything else. You're nearly hitting six figures just with the loan to cover your living expenses. So we're talking a large debt load, and we'll talk about why that is such a astronomical cost when you consider the results that are forthcoming from Campbell. Alright, the next data set we're going to look at deals with exclusivity. Now, this is going to be a little bit controversial. Some folks will not like that I'm including this, but exclusivity is a factor that plays into law school, higher education in general. And to say the least, Campbell is not exclusive. Now, what you're looking at here, you're probably going, wait, they get a whole lot of apps, 1,200 that year, and then 517 offers. That's a pretty exclusive rate. It's well under half. But this is from 2011. We're going to see in just a moment the numbers for 2019, which are a good bit less exclusive. Alright, these are the numbers for 2008 for October 2018 to 2019. So this is a much less exclusive class of kids. Now, it makes me sound hyper pretentious, and I don't intend that to be what happens, but I'm sure it comes off that way. But exclusivity is a factor that plays into higher education choices in general, and this shows a pretty sharp decline. What we see here is an application pool that has gone from 1,200, over 1,200, down below 700. We're talking about a 44% drop in about 7 to 8 years. It's substantial when you consider just the fact that higher education in general is getting larger and larger every year, and it's also strange when you consider the fact that if you go back previous in the video, that the actual amount of money that Campbell charges is also shot through the roof. So we've gone through basically a percentage, and that's one thing I'll point out here where it says acceptance rate percent. That's not in the earlier data because the ABA did not calculate that data for you. They now put it out. But for those curious, the data for 2011 would have given us roughly a 42% acceptance rate. So they've become about 20% less exclusive as time has gone on, while raising their tuition by 25%, which, again, given this context, makes absolutely no sense. So we'll look at some other metrics to see if maybe we can justify the increase in tuition and maybe change our minds about whether or not we should go to Campbell, but it's not going to. Spoiler alert, you still shouldn't go. All right, the next thing we're going to be looking at is the employment data. And sorry, guys, this is directly from the ABA's required disclosures webpage that covers this material. You can go back as far as 2011, but this is for the graduates from 2018. This data is acquired 9 months after they graduate. So they graduate in May. This data has usually been fully acquired by February in that year. Usually they release April or May-ish of the following year. So within a year, you get some data. The key data here, if you want to look at that full-time long-term column and you look at bar passage required, that means they got a full-time job that's expected to last more than a year, where they have to pass the bar or be an attorney to get. Everything else on that list is either part-time, short-term, or simply doesn't require that you be an attorney, meaning that you can fail the bar and still get the employment. Not to say that's not good, honest work, but law schools are professional degrees that are designed to put you into a profession, which means you need to have that degree. So the gold standard for most law schools is that full-time, long-term bar passage required number. And if you look here, you'll see 65 out of their 129 graduates had that accomplishment, meaning they got about a 50-50 shot. So Campbell gives you a 50-50 shot of getting full-time, long-term, bar passage required work as an attorney. That's low, especially when you consider that the price tag, if you do full sticker, is over $200,000. Now, what I'm going to say next is probably going to tick off some people, and it is not empirical, it is anecdotal. From my time at Campbell, I graduated in 2013, so I entered there in 2010. A large number, I wouldn't say it's a majority or even a strong plurality, but a fairly decent-sized chunk of students are not legacy, but they're basically baked in employment. We have quite a few JAG folks. They're obviously going to be employed the moment they get out and pass the bar. They'll be employed by the U.S. Navy, Army, or some branch of the military. Congrats to them. But they know that walking in. So Campbell didn't do that for them. That was basically done by virtue of them passing the bar after having attended any law school, because usually the JAG programs, they just want you in a law school, graduating, passing the bar, and then going to practice in whatever branch of the military you are going to practice in. The remainder of the baked-in employment I will call not nepotism, but connections. And the connections are mommy and daddy were attorneys or judges, and Campbell's chock full of them. I don't mean to disparage anybody, and it's not meant to be disparaging. I would love to have that connection and go for it. But there's a lot of that mom and dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, whatever. There are those connections there, and basically that employment is more or less baked in. Now, that is not to say there's anything wrong with baked-in employment. I just think it needs to be acknowledged, and that number and that trend I doubt has gone anywhere. Campbell, for lack of a term, it's full of kids who could not get into UNC, Chapel Hill, or Wake. So that's why they end up at Campbell, and they really do have baked-in employment to a large extent. All right, guys, so this next data set that you're looking at right now, this is basically the brass ring. This is what a lot of student loan advocates, debt advocates, college reform, campus reform advocates have been wanting for years, and it's only just now come out, and that's basically because the administration currently is pushing this pretty hard, or it's been pushed hard for a series of years, and this administration basically just finally got around to doing it. We now have salary data. We've had data related to debt loads for a while, but this is the first time we've actually gotten to see salary data. And this data is basically 1 year, the salary data, excuse me, is basically the salaries 1 year after graduation. So I believe based on the number of graduates here you're looking at, this is probably 2017, but it could be 2015. It's the only one where the number's high enough, so 141 number you're seeing there. So 2015 or 17, I kind of lean more towards 17 just because it wouldn't make much sense to pull information that's 4 years old that would only indicate data from 1 year after graduation, so it wouldn't be terribly effective. So I'm guessing it's 2017, but the website, College Scorecard, doesn't do a great job. And that's a government website. This is information put out by the Department of Education, and it is trustworthy to the extent that it is complete. But we'll take a long look at this, and we need to point out one key thing here is that this is dealing with medians. So with this median debt load and median earnings after a year, half the people are making less than that, half the people have more debt than that, and they're probably the same people. This is a bad number. This is a terrible number. This is a number that you would not expect with any professional degree. This is a number that does not line up even with their other Campbell's other high-level degrees. I believe their pharmacy program, the median income for their graduates is $110,000 a year, according to the same website. So this is a very low number. I will also point out something else, and I'll put the data up in just a second that you can actually see it. All right, so this data set is from the same website. It's College Scorecard, and I'll put links to all these websites I used in the description. But essentially, this is the degree you get when you want to become a public school teacher in North Carolina. And I would say that you might be able to say it's not fair to use North Carolina as an example because teachers are horribly paid, but I want to do that because, one, same school, this is the debt load you get at Campbell. This is Campbell's data, and it's also only about $5,000 less than you'd make on the median side as an attorney after graduating from Campbell. This is bad. This data is really terrible, and this is just a juxtaposition here. In theory, you would hope 60. You'd really hope 60 from law, and UNC's at 55, so maybe not. But for a quote unquote less valuable degree, a bachelor's degree, you are not losing all that much earning potential. Now, what's argued is, okay, we can make plenty of money on the back end of a law degree. You make more money and it becomes almost exponential. That was true in the 1980s. It's not as true anymore in 2019. And I'll also point this out. This number you're seeing here, that $43,000 a year, the going rate for doc review, which is basically very low level legal employment, doesn't technically require that you have a license to practice law in the state. You can actually just do it with the JD. That pay rate is about $20 an hour in Raleigh, a little more in Charlotte, and there's some places that the longer you work there, they pay you a little more. I think it's maybe 23, 24 now. But what that puts you in is this median salary is lower than that low-level non-attorney rate. So they're not even reaching what the equivalent of, it'd be what, $23 an hour times 40 hours a week, 50 weeks out of the year, would put you at around that 48-ish mark, somewhere in there. So it's lower than that. So this is a very, very damning number. And now let's talk about the debt load on top of that. The median debt load is $144,000. That's obscene. It makes no sense. And what most law schools are now doing is they're having basically symposiums telling you how to manage your debt, and most of that says go on IBR until you start making your millions, which is just a bunch of bull crap. IBR is a functional stopgap measure for those who would normally have that goofily large $1,600 a month payment, but it doesn't really help out too much if your income doesn't increase. That IBR plan was always meant to be, okay, as your income grows, but if your income doesn't grow substantially, you're not even outpacing the debt. Most of those loans, by the time you average them all out, it's about 6% APR on those. So you're looking at $6,000 plus dollars per $6,007. Let me do the math real fast. Ends up being about $8,600 a year just in interest. And those IBR payments, typically, if you're looking at $43,000 a year, one, I'll tell you, if you're making $43,000 a year or less, your IBR payment will be absolutely minimal. It will not be much at all. You're talking, by the time you get through your basic deductions, you're going to be paying maybe $200 a month, which is not nowhere near what's required, just to outpace the interest. So IBR is never meant to be a permanent solution, and Just look up student loan tax bomb and that forgiveness that they offer in 20 years. The way the laws are currently, by the end of it, you'll basically be taxed on every dollar that's forgiven, and it would be like you're a millionaire one year, and any accrued wealth you might have, to the extent that you're solvent, they can collect. So it's not a good situation to be in. But overall, this data in particular is probably the most important thing you can watch in this video. In fact, I'll probably put a special link just for it. I'll put a link to college scorecards so you can look at this in other law schools. But this is bad, guys. 43 grand a year is a median. Knowing that half are making less than that, that's very upsetting considering the sheer cost of Campbell. And seeing that median debt load means that whatever grants they're giving, whatever tuition they're doing, among that 144 graduate number that you see on the left-hand side, that grant system didn't do much for them. Full sticker would be a terrifying prospect. So I wouldn't touch this school with a 10-foot pole. You will basically be forfeiting a good chunk of your life to dealing with debt for not a whole lot of product at the end of it. It's just a bad deal, guys. I really don't want to oversell it, but this data in particular is probably the reason why I'm really upset with this institution in particular. My story sucks with that, but this is demonstrably, objectively horrible data, and the school has done nothing over the past decade to deal with it, although in all likelihood they probably knew this data was present. That debt load is downright irresponsible. It's the fact that they're doing, and it's gone up by 25%, and you're getting these numbers. This is absolutely insane. The idea that you can raise your tuition by $8,000 in 8 years, or 25% over 25% over 8 years, and not tag it to anything, inflation or anything else. This is a money grab. Campbell is participating in a big money grab, and it's not criminal, but I think it probably should be. This is inappropriate. This is basically law schools. This law school is filling coffers. And the last thing I'm going to show y'all is more or less something that upsets me on a personal level, considering just how bad this particular data set is. Alright, so this is the data that really kind of upsets me in light of the other data you've already seen in this video. This is the salary for basically Campbell's top employees that are basically not trustee members. Campbell is a nonprofit, as most private colleges are, and Rich Leonard, who is the current dean of Campbell Law School, his total salary benefits package is about $302,000 as of 2016. It's only gone up in the past few years where data is available. This is really kind of terrible in light of the numbers I've gone over already, and I think it's something that needs to be addressed. And the dean has caught some flack in the past for some expenditures that were made, although not with school funds, I'll give him that much. Some expenditures that were just basically viewed as kind of silly. Yeah, so this article is from spring of last year from Above the Law, so full credit to abovethelaw.com. If you're a prospective law student, you'll get to know that website pretty well. Basically, this draw a little bit of ire from the community, legal and otherwise, in part because the tuition is so blaringly high. This is from spring of 2018. Sorry, winter of 2018. My apologies. This is the conference bike. Now, the dean purchased this using donated money that was intended for him to use to do things to bring notice to the school, sometimes silly things, according to him. I'm not saying that didn't happen. It probably did. People with lots of money do weird, silly things with money. It's just how capitalism kind of works, which is one of the beautiful things about it. You get cool, interesting stuff about it. But when you're charging $42,000 a year in tuition, this looks like extravagance and silliness. This conference bike, if you go to the actual conference bike website where they got this from, this is the Kobe 7, and I've actually done research on this. Never thought I'd have to ever say I did research on what a conference bike was, but the company that makes this is a Kobe 7 because it has 7 seats. This is almost $14,000. So that is $14,000 that basically the dean thought would be fun to spend. But here's the thing, money's fungible. That money could have gone to any number of things, like lowering tuition by $1, whatever it could have been. And it might seem kind of snipey, but this is just it's being out of touch. It's not knowing where you're, in light of his salary and everything else, it's just a bad look. And with that, I'll end the video. If I want to do an addendum later, I might do one. But the data, it doesn't support it, guys. Do not touch the school with a 10-foot pole unless you have baked-in employment, as so many often do. but just don't touch it. It's a bad idea. Avoid this like the plague. It just is not worth signing away such a large amount of money and a large portion of your life for such limited and often mediocre results. Please look at those median numbers. Go back and look at the links in the description and find this information yourself. It is out there. Please, if you're being badgered about going to law school, please show people these numbers. It's not a great thing, and you can do this for any number of law school. Just in North Carolina, I'd say Elon were the big one, and I would have said Charlotte School of Law if it still existed, but it no longer does. But guys, just please, please, please look before you leap on this. Campbell is just a bad choice overall, and have a great day.